Thank you very much. I'm first going to introduce everyone on this panel, and then some people, very important people, in the first row. So I'm starting with, Cristian Mungiu is surrounded by his actors. First at the right, you know, of course, Renate Reinsve. We all discovered her, of course, with the wonderfully inaptly titled The Worst Person in the World. And then remember Armand, La Convocation in French. And then, of course, last year, Sentimental Value. Sebastian Stan is, well, very popular. Quite chameleon, I must say, from The Adventures to The Apprentice by Ali Abbasi, and of course a Silver Bear in Berlin for A Different Man, very aptly titled, in which he was partnered already by Renata. And I think Lisa Carlehed, who plays Mia, it's first time in Cannes?
Yeah.
Ah, well, welcome. And of course, Cristian Mungiu, definitely not his first time in Cannes. Palme d'Or for 4 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days. And Best Director for Graduation. And then, on the first row, actors Lisa Loven-Kongsley and Christian Rubeck, producer Tudor Reu, editor Mircea Olteanu, production designer Simona Paduretta, cinematographer Tudor Paduru, producers Diveke Graver and Andrea Otmar, and actors Anna Bodea, Julia Namani, and Alan Pants. Right. I'm going to start with the first question, as usual, for Christian. You're well known to pick up your film subjects from newspaper headlines because you've been a journalist. Was it the case with this particular film?
Pretty much. It's just that, like always, I allow some years to pass between this moment when I read a piece of news and the moment when I decide to make a film about it or starting from it, because I never reenact what has happened. I just like starting from a real story to speak about something that I consider to be important happening in the society today. And I need a while for that wowness of the news to dissipate before I make the film. So for this case, for example, I read the first articles about such situations, I would say some 10 years ago. And I started collecting such situations. And finally, I started documenting these cases like 4 years ago. And I went to Norway. And I started talking to these people, the people involved in all such situations. So finally, when I decided to write down the screenplay, which was like 2 years ago, I had a lot of information and a lot of details from a lot of such cases. And even if the film follows closely, let's say, one of the cases, it has information and details from all the cases that I've been studying. And I think that, even if it's a fictional film, most of the details which are on the judicial side, if you want, are coming from this, documentation that I've been doing.
Thank you.
Arash Azizi, thank you so much. A really brilliant film. I think the best so far. My question for Renate Reinsve.
Have
I
you
didn't
seen
say.
several? Or, I mean,
I've seen all the competition films
okay,
so
good,
far.
Good.
My question for Renate Reinsve, after your phenomenal success in the last two films, I'm sure you had a lot of proposals. We've seen you also in films in other films. I mean the last two films at Cannes, but you've also been in other films. Some of the roles are more similar to another. This one was a really new challenge, playing a sort of a conservative Christian mother of five. My question was, what was this challenge like? And did you also find commonalities between your character here and some of your previous characters in Sentimental Value and Worst Person in the World?
So I'm a very director-driven actor. So I follow the director, and I loved Cristian's work. And I heard that Cristian was coming to Norway to make a movie, and that we were meeting to read the script, like have a really dry read through, and for me it's choosing projects based on what it can be a really good script, but if you don't match with the director or have some kind of chemistry, and you feel that you can go really far with something, it's you know that you can't go in depth with something. And we had that first meeting, and it was we talked about different characters for me actually to do, but I really got very emotional reading Lisbeth, the character, and I knew she was very different from me and very different from anything I'd done, but I really love trying to immerse myself in new styles through a director's kind of tastes and where they want to pull me, and it was really challenging. The first scene that we did was actually the one where Lisbeth gets told that by these two ladies, I don't know, I can't reveal too much probably, but where the ladies come and tell her what the situation is. That was our first scene that we did, and to get into because I knew that Cristian likes to remove subjectivity and be as objective as he can with the scene and the characters in the scene and where he places the camera too. So it was a very, very different way of working, and kind of the character will develop itself from all those factors. And that's also what I really like, being like removing myself and removing any like ego, but serve really the story and the scene as much as I can. And I feel that there's a lot of freedom in that, and from there, the role can really, of course, develop very kind of like it's this canvas where also it's an opening for the audience to read what they want through the character too. If it's not I'm not telling the audience exactly what they should feel or like, and that is very much the core of Cristian's work too. No, it was very different, and then you get a very different result. I haven't thought about how it connects to other characters, because for me it's not really that relevant. It just comes in the process. Yeah.
It's good film scheduling. We started shooting with the most difficult scene, so.
Yeah, and I got the script 3 days before.
This is why I decided to work with these
Very
people
nice.
here.
Very nice of them.
Yeah. But they did well. Yeah, fine.
Sebastian, can we ask you the same question about your first meeting with Cristian? And,
Yeah, I mean, I became aware of Cristian a long time ago. Obviously, I think the first time we met was at when he screened Graduation, I believe, at the New York Film Festival. And I went there. I brought my mom.
Actually, your mom brought you by car.
Yeah. And by the way, you forgot Beyond the Hills. He also got
sure.
for that. But look, it's been a real dream. I mean, personally, certainly, it's been a journey for me to reconnect with Romania. I left in a very chaotic way, and I've really tried to educate myself about the country, and I found through film I can learn easier. I think that's what art is supposed to be about, right? It's supposed to sort of create some distance and some space for us to process things a little bit, perhaps differently than just from the reality. It was natural for me to try to kind of find my way to bond, rebond with the country through film, and who else to do it with than this man who I think has, I've admired for a very long time because of how he, he's got such a keen eye on what's happening, and I think storytelling and just the way he's told them in the past has been so effective, and I think we're still probably reflecting about the movie today, and that's not an accident, So it was just very obvious for me.
Lisa?
Especially after we shaped him, everything became very, very clear.
Yes. Yeah, it's quite a change from The Apprentice. The hairdo. Yeah.
Still purging from that. Don't worry.
Lisa, can you tell us about your first meeting with Cristian?
Yes. It was very nice to meet this a lovely man. It's a little bit, as Renate said before, you have to connect both with the character and the text, and also then the people that you're working with. So it's all about chemistry, right?
Did you get the script 3 days before?
Exactly.
Okay, right. 3 days after we started shooting.
Yeah, no, but we're connecting very well, and it's Cristian is just a very lovely person. Yeah.
Bonjour, Mimosa Kuchli.
It's in French, so
Oui.
you can have the headphones if you want to.
Aha.
Donc, Albanian Communication Group. Félicitations pour le film. Je ne l'ai pas vu hier le film comme une spectatrice, mais j'avais l'impression que j'étais un personnage de votre film. Étant d'origine albanaise et que je me trouve en France, ça fait des années, je peux vous dire que la logique française, des fois, s'incline devant les solutions à la albanaise chez nous, dans notre famille. Donc, ce que j'ai vu aussi dans votre film, ma question, c'est que est-ce que ce que vous vouliez montrer, c'était cette force de liens familiaux devant les règles, on peut dire, de la société?
En français ou en anglais?
In English.
In English.
Yeah.
Well, I prefer that you interpret the film, and I prefer that you find your own interpretation. What I really wish to do, like always, is to speak about something that I consider to be one of the most important issues in our contemporary global society, which is mainly this conflict of values, and especially between this kind of traditional values and this progressive values. And we see that this led to splitting the society, I would say, into groups of people that really detest each other. And we see that nowadays we live in we claim that we live in a global world, but we couldn't be more divided. And if we start, analyzing a little bit what happens in the world, and not in Romania or in Norway, but in US or in France, you see that we live in a very, very divided society in which people have completely stopped trying to understand the others who do not share the same views with them. And I think that the first step to understanding the other is listening and maybe doubting that you are definitely sure. We come from this country where there was just one truth which belonged to the strongest of the day. We don't like such societies, and I understand progress, but I think that even a progressive society, it's good to doubt every now and then about the values that you wish to impose to the others. If they are this good, you need to convince them not to impose them. This is what I think.
Hi, Brandon Lewis from Awards Watch in the United States. And this question is for Renate and Sebastian. Both of your performances are really grounded, and they're subtle, and they don't necessarily have, large, expanded emotions. It's all very internalized. How did you two sort of develop those characters and ensure that we connected with Mihai and Lisbeth without, but in a more internalized way?
For me, the really amazing thing working with Cristian was, of course, you build a character and she has some elements that she's very, she's a believer in her religion, and she's very humble to her life and the situation. She's very grateful. And those things will, of course, affect your physicality. And there are certain things in the psychology when I would talk to Cristian and ask him about certain things where he would say, I don't want to judge her intentions. And for me, that was so amazing, because also one of the themes in the movie is trying to really understand someone's perspective and going into a character where you don't fully understand someone's perspective, but you really try to empathize with what someone's going through that is so complex, what's really incredible, like how difficult and how humbling it is to go into someone who lives a completely different life than I do and really try to ground and be in that life in the period of the movie, and still not completely understanding is kind of also what the movie teaches you in a way, how difficult it is to understand someone completely and have compassion and have care and actually do the action of care towards someone, even though you don't completely understand it. And I really felt that connection with the character from the outside and the inside. So that was, great having that experience.
Well, obviously, a very helpful thing was, we got to rehearse in Romania. We met with Cristian. I think Renate also experienced Romania a little bit, so I think that was a very vital part of the rehearsal process.
For how long?
I think it was at least a couple weeks or 2 weeks or so before, and that we were in Romania. We went actually even to visit some Pentecostal sort of churches and so on. So we had our own research, and obviously, I even though my time really was split between America, Vienna, and Romania, I still grew up with pretty traditional Romanian upbringings, and so I kind of understood a lot of what was going on in the script. I think, obviously, for a while, and as it pertains to what's about to happen in my life, I've been reflecting about having children and trying to understand what it means to be a parent in today's world, and so that also fueled things. And then lastly, to be honest, you can do all this work and you can load yourself up with everything, and then you just go there and you just have to make yourself available for what the director is going to bring out of you. I really believe we have to be, as actors, to me, it's being about as selfless as possible. It's someone else might see what you have access to better than you can. And that's how I felt here, That's why I believe very much it's about the people you surround yourself with, and Cristian was very specific, and I trusted him, and I felt that largely I was able to do something different than before.
Thank you for trusting me. Thank you. That's good. Yeah.
Jeffrey Wells, Hollywood Elsewhere. I was noticing last night in the immediate wake of last night's screening, or yesterday afternoon screening, that many progressive-minded critics seem to be in denial about the thrust of what this film is more or less saying, and evidenced by the fact that many of them are saying that the film is ambiguous. Its allegiances are ambiguous, neither one way or the other. And I was wondering if you could react to one paragraph by David Rooney, the Hollywood Reporter, who wrote his final paragraph: Mungiu has pulled off what might be considered by most art house audiences to be almost a subversive act in this age of rightward drift and intolerance, just by making the conservative Christians unimpeachable compared to the insufferably holier-than-thou, finger-pointing liberals.
I'm very happy that he read the film this way. It means it wasn't this ambiguous after all. Actually, I think life is ambiguous. So if you do a cinema inspired by life and reality, and you wish to respect the film should preserve this kind of ambiguity about the characters, about why they acted like this, how they acted. I don't think that every time when you make a choice, you rationalize and you know why you do something. And I don't believe in such films in which I will reconfirm what you believe already. Well, there are already a lot of films doing this for some time in cinema. If you just think about the choice of selection in festivals in the last 10, 15 years, everybody tells you the same thing. I don't think that cinema should do this. Cinema should try to make you reconsider your opinions and ask you if you have thought well, and these are really your thoughts, because we live in this world in which we are so much influenced by the trend, and the trend today became so strong that you pretty much lost a little bit the freedom of speaking aside, of thinking aside from everybody else. And I think this is what I wanted to do, and this is what I'm struggling to do with my last 2-3 films. To just, because, it became, you need to be bold today to express something which is different from the main view. And, that's what I'm trying to do.
Hi, good morning. Maria Guerra, Quinótico, Spain. Well, congratulations on this powerful, complex movie. This is a question for Sebastian Stan. This movie is also about the patronizing gaze on the others. That gaze, the race, is not exactly racism, but it's very painful for somebody with an accent or a skin or whatever. I was wondering whether you have actually felt that gaze of racism or patronizing gaze in your life, and if so, how did you deal with it? Thank you.
I think you're talking about discrimination, right? On all levels, which is sort of happening around all of us. I mean, how are we all dealing with it? I think the only way to do it is just to remain as honest as possible and to think about your own morals and your own values and be the example that you want to see in the world, right? I mean, I struggle with this a lot. What's my part? What's my responsibility now? I'm an actor, whatever. But I'm not on the front lines. I'm not in an operating room. I'm not out there being shot at. But this is my medium. This is my lane, and all I can do is, try to involve myself in movies that bring up conversations and different point of views. And it's interesting. It reminded me that last thought or question there reminded me of this. George Saunders was talking in an interview about this Chekhov quote, which I thought was really relevant for this film, but I think for art in general, which was, art doesn't have to solve a problem. It just has to embody it correctly. And I think as long as we can continue to do that fearlessly, then I think we can actually push back against those things.
Hi, Jada Yuan from The Hollywood Reporter, and congratulations on the movie. Sebastian, sorry to put you on the spot again and ask you about a project that you said you're purging yourself from. But you were last here with The Apprentice, and it was months before the election, and Trump has been president for over a year now, and I'm just curious how your understanding of him has evolved in that time.
It's just not a laughing matter, to be honest. It isn't. It's, I think we're in a really, really bad place. I really do. And to be honest with you, it's like, when you're looking at what's happening, right, which is, if we're talking about the consolidation of the media, censorship, the threats, the supposed lawsuits that seemingly never end but don't actually go anywhere. The writing was on the wall. We encountered all that with the movie, to the point where we were 3 days before the festival unsure if the movie was going to play at the festival. So, it's, maybe people are paying attention more to that film. I think it will stand the test of time for that. But we went through all of it way before Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert and so on, you know. So wish it wasn't like that.
Hi there, Mike Stanavich here from the Gagosian Quarterly. Thank you for the excellent film. My question is directed at Cristian. As you said, the movie was based really on these interviews and these newspapers that you have read throughout the years, and you took this time to separate from the newspapers itself. But could you talk a little bit more about how you wrote it and where you started exactly, and what characters had changed throughout the process between your first initial idea and, you know, when Renate, for example, took the scene?
I started by trying to talk to as many people who are involved in such cases. I watched, there were some films about such cases which were already shot before. I went to Norway and I talked to everybody, people from Barnevernet, I talked to people from the police, I talked to judges, I went to assist to attend such trials in the court of law. I talked to NGOs, I talked to journalists, and then I decided, not that I decided, I realized that there's a pattern into this kind of story. And I followed the pattern of one of the most prominent cases, and I think I wrote like 3 pages before sending the story to Sebastian after 10 years of attempts, and I told him, I think finally we have something that we can do together. And he liked the story. He told me, well, I think it's important, we could do it. And then I wrote the screenplay. So Sebastian is somebody that I had in mind when I was writing. But, for example, the other family, which you see in the film, that's not part of the real story. And I was trying all the time, because this is what I do, I was trying all the time to have this very balanced view of things, because this is important for me. And it's also important to see how you can position yourself so that you're not judgmental to what you do. And at the end, you know, it's important for me to say that the legislation in Norway has changed in between the moment when I started investigating and the moment when I shot the film. So they noticed that something wasn't working very well and they changed the legislation. And it's important to say that this is not a film about a conflict between Romania or Norway or anything like this, or a criticism of the Norwegian society. This is way more complex for me and more sophisticated. It's, if you want, an investigation about the limits of your intimacy and freedom, and what happens when your personal values do not match the values of the society in which you wish to live in this global world. And what is the right that you're having about your own children, and where this rights stop and the society takes over. We always expect from a very modern and progressive society to be defending its minorities, but, well, you know, the question that the film asks, if there are good minorities and bad minorities, I don't think so. I mean, either there are minorities and you defend them, or there aren't. I don't think in this idea that somebody has the strength and the power and the authority to say, you belong to the good minority, I'm going to defend your rights, but unfortunately you don't. And I think that this is what happens today. And, you know, a lot of things connect for me today between this kind of view that you was mentioning, this patronizing view, which for me and for very many people who had to experience this in this post-colonial era is unbearable, especially coming from people that know so little about you. You belong to the gray area somewhere there, you know, I mean, you weren't in the big history. And you see the effects of this exaggeration from both sides present in the, I don't know, public policy today. And I think that it's not, what's happening now with the extreme far right is a reaction to what was happening before to the extreme far left. And everybody needs to keep some balance when they get to power and they try to impose their values, because if not, you're just provoking the reverse effect.
Hi, question here from Brazil, Rodrigo Fonseca, Correio da Manhã, question to you, Cristian. Excuse me if I bring a more technical subject, but I think since graduation, you and Vladimir Tudor, your cinematographer, are working together.
Tudor.
Yeah, please let's.
When we watch a movie like Fjord, we got amazed by the acting, by the writing, but I think the cinematography of this film is so amazing as everything else. And I would like to understand a bit, how do you work together and the development of this partnership?
Thank you. Tudor started working on my set as the assistant of my former DOP. And when I had to move on, and because my former DOP started working a lot in...
Thanks to you.
Yes, thanks to the success of 4 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days, and also thanks to the fact that he speaks Russian, so he started working a lot in the ex-communist countries. So I needed to continue for graduation with somebody else, and I decided to work with Tudor, who was on the set of my Beyond the Hills, so he knew how we work. And I think we did a commercial together, just to test each other, you know. And well, it's now it became organic. And I don't like changing the crew. All the people which accompany me today here in this audience are people that work with me for years. My editor and my production designer. And well, the way we work, we did something very nice this time, and it helped us. We were there scouting together, and we took a lot of pictures, me and you, me and him. And then we came back for this technical rehearsal. And in the technical rehearsal, that was very funny because I was playing all the parts and he was recording the scene. And I was playing Renate, and I was playing Sebastian, and I was telling the lines. I say, I would do this, and then I would do this. And so we got to have not a storyboard, because when you shoot in plan séquence, when you shoot in very long scenes, you can't have a storyboard. The angle changes very many times. But we had a series of videos that we used when we were shooting just to remember what we decided we would do. And then I don't interfere too much about the light, because he knows that, you know, what I like, what I don't like. I let him make his thing. But, you know, the choreography of shooting in long takes is very, very complicated, and this is also complicated for the actors, I have to say, because the effect of this way of working is that everything needs to look very, very natural, and I like when people have the feeling that they overheard some people talking from the next room and not listening to actors playing. But for the actors and for the camera, it's very complicated. It's just very precise choreography that you rehearse, and then you do 10, 20, 30, 40 takes. Sorry. Well, this is the way you get there, but the effect matters. And the effect is something nice. And I have to say something very good about Norway. It's such a stunning country, and it's such a stunning light that, as Tudor said, well, that you don't have to be very smart to shoot in this country. You know, the light pretty much helps you out. So I think that we did a very good job together, and we're very much accustomed to one another, so we know how to choreograph these scenes. Thank you.
Thank you. Here. Yeah.
Bonjour. Larissa Torea, Moldavie, République de la Moldavie. Félicitations pour cette nouvelle radiographie de notre société, une radiographie assez glaçante pour moi. Et félicitations Sebastian Stan pour votre accent romain. Je pensais même que c'est de la Bessarabie, votre accent un peu comme ça étrange.
You need to listen to him speaking French, then you'll...
Donc j'ai une question pour Sebastian Stan. J'aimais beaucoup ce rôle très différent. Est-ce qu'aujourd'hui, être différent, ça peut être dangereux? Merci.
I just want to make sure I understood. I'm playing a different role.
Now, being different, can it be dangerous today? If you're different, is this dangerous?
Apparently. That's why we should keep doing it. So we normalize differences.
Okay, right.
That's all I got.
Hi.
It's on.
It's okay. Oh, okay. I'm a psychologist and I do cinematherapy and I love your movies. So for the Polish TV. And the topic of violence is my everyday life, unfortunately, especially in Poland. And I just want to ask you and the actors, hi Renate, what about this triangle of violence? How to get out of this in a psychological level, and why this family is so passive and full of acceptance? You know, it's like provocative, maybe. For how do you feel?
I don't see them as passive, I have to say. I think that you're from Poland, so you would understand that if you change from, and as you know, there were a lot of Polish cases like this one that I'm using for the film. Actually, there was a diplomatic conflict between Norway and Poland because the Polish ambassador left with this child in the trunk of his car, if you remember. And this started a conflict between the two countries. And this is because it's very difficult when the values are so different between your society and somebody else's society. And the idea is that people took for granted that freedom means that you can follow your values even if you live abroad and you live in the middle of a different society. And actually, it's not this simple. There are limits, and as you know, even if people don't speak aloud about this, in every other country with a lot of migration, and you know, the more different, taking from the question from Larissa, if it's dangerous to be different, well, it complicates your life. It's better to be a nice white sheep in a flock of sheep and nobody will notice you, but if you have a black spot, well, you need to be stronger. And this is what happens in all the societies with people who have different opinions. They need to be stronger because they will be noticed. And I think that in the case of such families, you realize how powerless you are, because of course the society is way stronger than you. You are not at home. And I think that they were doing whatever they could. What's important for me to say is that I couldn't have made the reverse story of this film about some progressive people living in a traditional society, because there you don't have any rights. There is no story there. People are, you know, I could do this in Norway, and this is to say that this is not a criticism about the Norwegian society, because there's enough democracy there that you could speak about such issues, and people still ponder if all the social measures that they have taken are good or there's place for improvement. And you can only do this in democracy. I don't want to name countries where I couldn't have made this film, the other way around. But this is why in the film this is mentioned, that you know, it all belongs to the degree of freedom that you have in that society.
For me, it was very scary to go into playing someone who was doing something wrong and was violent without knowing it. It was, yeah, very emotional and is something I couldn't completely understand. And I think it's very important because I think a lot of domestic violence is invisible to the people who does it. And I love this dynamic between like what happens within a family that is invisible to other people and even for themselves, and the structure within a family, and for that time, or it might never happen, but if someone discovers it, and what that system, how rigid that system is, even though it's very invisible, and how when is it time for society or the instances in society to take over and teach the family something if there is something wrong. I think this dynamic is very, very important to focus on. But of course, in this case, it's a very extreme measure. Yeah, I feel I'm losing my thread here, but yeah, it is a very, very important perspective to understand how difficult it is to see within a family where that happens, and how invisible it is, and how political that is, because within a family you also create a citizen that will come out in society and behave towards others the way they learn to behave at home. So it is, very important and very, difficult.
Sebastian, this is going to be the last answer we have for the press conference, but if you want to react.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what's been said. Again, just to follow back on the differences, I think about that not only with the work but also as a person. I find that it's important to accept yourself and to accept the things that are different about you, and that sometimes is what leads me to the work and to different challenges and to understanding different perspectives and educating myself, because I do feel like within the family system there's a lot of gray sort of areas where blood kind of overshadows self-truth, and it shouldn't have to be that way, but again, I go back to film and artists that can kind of try and help us give a different idea to what's happening, so we can go home and kind of look at how are we leading our lives and what we can do differently about it. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Cristian. Thank you.